basically running what I'll call a futurist role, looking at emerging usages of technology and looking beyond the product group's horizons. Sandhi?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. After that thought-provoking talk from Cisco, what I wanted to talk today is about security. And I think Janus mentioned yesterday that in the Munich conference, security was discussed quite a bit. There were a lot of discussions. And this has been my key concern as well, partly because I work at Intel and we have always been looking at PCs and tablets and phones and desktops, and security is always was on top of our mind. We have shown that it is even more of our interest with your latest acquisitions with McAfee. As we go into the Internet of Things, this problem is expanding even further. So let me dive into what you saw. The dots were 1 trillion sensors there swarming around. I think just a provocative statement. If when I started looking at what Janus had provided, TED-style talk with a first sentence that provokes. I think what this is in the end-to-end IoT value chain, the sensor node is the most vulnerable. Once you get the sensor data out to the gateway, everything behind that is as good as any enterprise security. I think the question is, now we are moving to such a large number of sensors, the problem is expanding quite a bit. Let me give you an example. I'm not going to spend much time, but you might have seen this. Around 80s and 90s, there were only few, maybe a desktop that everybody shared. Maybe there were, in the bedroom, there were a couple of TVs, old analog TVs. There was nothing digital about it. And then things started changing. In a 2013-14 home, I have desktops, I have home servers, I have a bunch of tablets, I have everybody in my home has a phone. I might have a Nest that is controlling the HVAC system at home. On the other end, you can see the devices everywhere. Now even the car has intelligence in it, and just the number of devices at home. Maybe I'm technologist and I keep all my old computers still around. I probably have about 30 different computers at home from all sorts and shapes and sizes that Intel has ever done. But nonetheless, most of the houses have a lot of these different types of devices. And I think the problem really amplifies when you have those many devices. You don't know who is looking at those devices, the data coming out of those devices. Life with desktop, laptops, tablets, and phones, you can argue that it's 1.6 billion or 1.7 billion, all sorts and shapes. And we have a range of security problems. They range from malware to viruses to actually stuff getting stolen physically to spoofing, denial of services, and you can go on and on. And into that mix, now you are going to have your home with sensors, sensors for HVAC, your security cameras, you have sensors that are monitoring the energy consumption at your home, you have appliances, all hopefully eventually will be connected to the internet. Down below, there are all kinds of embedded devices. I know it's an eye chart, but you can see it all the way from manufacturing to HVAC systems to, I think the previous speaker talked about manufacturing plants. Every time a plane takes off from San Francisco to Amsterdam, the amount of data created is outstanding. And you can look at how many planes are in flight all the time around the world. So there's a tremendous amount of data. We are exposing now all these devices open. And this morning I was listening to CNN that there were some Chinese hackers have gotten into weather systems, and it had been down for 2 or 3 days. And it has a major impact on flights because they need to know very, very much in detail what's happening. So that's just one example of getting hit by an outside hacker. If you were to look at, so the point here is really there are 50 billion devices, most of them are unprotected. Or when we will put sensors, 1 trillion sensors, those are unprotected, and every time something gets hacked, it's a loss of economic value. Now, many of these devices, I also added loss of innocence, because many of these devices we might be running applications. And every time you download an app that runs on your HVAC system or what have you, you are going to be subjected to a 20-page legal document. And most of us are just going to click through without knowing what all we are going to give. So think about the number of devices that you have around your home. I have no time in the world, let alone read one such legal agreement. And as a result, I click through, and even if I wasn't intending somebody to be able to hack into my systems or share data or give that data, that opt-in is without knowing what the consequences are. I'm going to click through, and if at some stage I'm going to realize that I have given too much. This is not something that I have been imagining. Just in 2013, you can look at a range of things, all the way from external attack on Saudi production of oil, to you can see hacker taking control of your cars, attack on California substation fuels grid security debate. I don't know about whether the top one was right, but at least on the right-hand side, whether the first cyber attack is what took the Malaysian plane down. There is still a lot of discussions had happened whether that was the reason. There are medical device makers, there are HVAC systems. I think the bottom line is this is just the tip of the iceberg that you're seeing here, that people are getting into places where they shouldn't be. And it causes a tremendous amount of loss of economic value. Just to do a quick, another one, this is not limited to industrial devices, this is also being subjected to stuff at home. Some of these things might not be maybe laughable, but hacker takes over baby monitor and shouts obscenities at sleeping child. This might be, this might sound hilarious, but the very fact that somebody can get into those systems and be able to fiddle with it, it's not a very comforting thought. You can look at, fridge sending out spams after a web attack compromised gadgets. You can look at medical devices. You can look at wearable computing. Now we are going to have a humongous number of wearable devices. I think all of these are pointing to a great number of security risks. Sometimes you might be opting in and saying, hey, I'm going to send anonymized data. So for example, I wear a phone on me all the time. Technically, I shouldn't have any problem giving out, for example, hey, what's the temperature here? And be part of creating a temperature map of the city. But along with that information, my location, who I am, and other information, and you might have seen every time you click on an app, even WhatsApp, just look into the legal document and see what all you have to give up. Your phones, your contacts, your everything about everything, WhatsApp takes it up. The bottom line is just because it's anonymized data doesn't mean they're not getting more than what they are asking you to do. One example, car insurance companies reduce cost of insurance by gathering data about a customer's driving practices. If it was just that, I understand. They get a lot more than that. This is an example of electricity usage at home. You can see on the left-hand side, from time to time, the refrigerator comes on. Sometimes there's a kettle, there is a toaster. From time to time, this is the loading throughout the day. If a hacker can get access to this kind of data, it's very easy to see when people are at home and people are not at home. Right? On the right-hand side, washing machine, toaster, kettle. I'm likely to be here at home. Probably here there is nobody at home. This is good enough information for a serious criminal to be able to say, I'm going to burglarize this home. So if you were to ask user what they care about, I think there are four major blocks that I see. First one is data is safe from theft or alteration. I have stored data, I don't want anybody to access the data. Second one is there are pieces of information that I don't mind releasing it and sharing it to either friends or government or municipality. For example, I don't mind, what is my electricity usage to Portland General Electric, so that they can manage better. But that has to be with my consent. The third one is person remains anonymous unless opted in. A lot of the information I want to share in, I don't want them to know about me. There is a specific piece of data that I don't mind sharing. The last one is not quite fitting the definition of security, privacy, identity, is safety. At the end of the day, when we are working with Internet of Things, one of the key things that's going to be important is human safety. Getting your computer hacked is probably, it's not okay, but it's tolerable. But if it starts affecting me and my safety and my family's safety, it's becoming very important. Just when you look at security, you look at it from three perspectives. Is there a potential damage if the system is breached, and if that means loss of life, financial loss, or if it is just merely an inconvenience? The second one is value of the target. Somebody, a hacker, might be able to attack your pacemaker. Now, if you happen to be a president or a prime minister of a country, getting to that access to your pacemaker might be critical. So the question is it more valuable for the hacker to attack a specific device or maybe attack maybe a nozzle in a hydroelectric power station, Bonneville power station, to be able to say, instead of 100,000 cubic feet per minute, now let's push 10 million cubic feet per minute through the generator. And the third one is value of the market. What is the size of the market? How much the market would be willing to pay for security? I think yesterday I had a discussion with a gentleman. Does everything need to be securitized? My answer was yes. But I also understand that you had to pay just simple security, instead of simple sensors, when you have to securitize that sensor, it's probably going to cost to your pocket. So, security necessarily segments the IT market. There are different usages that require different levels of security mechanism. And again, cost sensitivity is important. And as I was mentioning, a thermostat might not appear to be that important, but if it affects the security of my home, I'm going to be more worried about it. There are areas about how do I make sure that I secure the communication, because that data is, when the sensor picks up the data, it has to be transmitted. If there is a problem, how do I recover and detect malware? And if there's a physical security, a lot of these IoT devices are going to be out in nowhere. They may not be managed or controlled or looked at by people all the time. If they're on the side of the wall on a tree somewhere. So what I'm going to do is outline three key challenges. The very first one is software-based sensor attack rates are rising. If you leave that sensor data unprotected, you might be able to get through a range of APIs. There might be sensor data might be sitting in system memory buffers. If you can access that data, and a lot of the computing devices have fairly large in-memories databases. Those are some of the vulnerable points. Once access to the sensor data is obtained, now somebody else is supposed to analyze that data. Now you as a hacker have the capability now to analyze that data and see what's going on in the environment. Second one is the security challenge is you can't tell whether the sensor is on and off, because the sensor might be thousands of miles away. There is nobody to look after that sensor. I can misplace that sensor. I can replace it with something else. I can do whatever I want with that sensor if somebody's not watching. The second piece is somebody can fake the data, make it appear like it's something else, or I can make a temperature sensor fake the data by saying instead of 73 degrees Fahrenheit, it's now 7,000 degrees, meaning there is something bad happening. There is a problem with that because when data comes to you, you have to also find out a way to make sure that the data is authentic. It has come from the right sensor, from the right place, and what it is doing, what the data it is giving you is the right data. The third piece is how do we keep credentials provisioned in the IoT device secret? What I mean by that is if a group of people have an access to that sensors, you want to make sure that the access is only allowed by the people who are authorized to have the data coming out of sensors. So there has to be a mechanism where you should be able to clearly, you and you only, the authorized people should be able to access, interpret, and act on that data. The second piece is a lot of these data, these sensors are going to get vandalized. These sensors are going to get tampered, and most of the IoT designs today, assume the device functionality is immutable. And the last one is what market segments really require device hardening from a physical attack. And so you have to not only logically separate them and securitize those sensors, but also have physical security in many places. They can be vandalized. So we talked about problems. Let me talk about quick solutions. First of all, security by creating context around sensors. What I mean by that is, again, one of the things that I wanted to point out right up front is there is no such thing as 100% security. So as much smartness you put into reducing your risk, there is always going to be somebody somewhere that's going to be better than you. So one of the ways you can do that is letting multiple sensors connect together. So if one of my sensors tells me that there is nobody at home, and the second sensor coming from my washer or dryer says somebody's operating it, now you have multiple locations. You have a context. Somebody's at home, somebody's not at home. So the context, creating context around sensors gives you a higher level of security. The second piece, a second security mechanism has really 4 aspects. The first is how do we protect in-memory data, the data that's sitting near the sensor or at the gateway. The second one is you might have a local storage around the sensor or at the edge. Now you might be also running analytics locally either at the sensor or at the edge. So you have to also make sure that the environment in which you are processing itself is a protected execution environment. And the last one is the communication, data communication that happens when data is transmitted either between sensors or sensors and gateway. So, and this complex that you see here also needs to be physically protected. So, a couple of things that I wanted to add. Only legitimate and authorized users should be able to get access. There has to be a easy to use environment policy to be able to control the data processing. We need scalable platforms because places where you don't need security, you don't need to have it or have minimal security, and being able to keep the sensor's credentials secret. So with my short 20-minute talk, again, I wanted to make sure that we as a community are placing a large focus on the sensor security. That's where the most vulnerabilities are. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandhi. I have time for one question. Actually, instead of a question, I will point out that there are 3 MacBook Airs in the room broadcasting their identity and being willing to be opened and shared online. So people have to learn how to set their default settings. You may not want to broadcast what your operating system is or what your hardware is. So I'll leave that as a comment, and I think Do you have one, Janusz?
So what would be your bottom line recommendation to sensor manufacturers? How they should structure next generation of devices and what they should embed on the chip? It's not only encryption for the data coming out, but I think it looks like we need some protection from hackers coming into the sensor.
I'll give a very quick answer. I didn't much pitch about Intel here, but if you have that problem, I'm more than open to talk how to securitize your sensors. I'm more than happy to talk one-on-one as well. We have technologies, we have McAfee assets, we have silicon assets. We have a lot of assets that we use from our laptop technology called vPros. So there are a range of technologies that we can either embed in the sensor, with the sensor, that we can talk about.
Again, let's thank our speakers. Thank you, Sandy. Our next speaker, we maybe should have called this the Sandy session, is Sandy Klausner, who's the CEO of Cubicon. We had a brief introduction of his technology yesterday from Flavio, but he's been working in this area